Hello friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here, and welcome to this is an Embers Adrift video today. I know that it must seem like, no, not must seem, it actually is. Um, I know that I play MMOs on the channel, and some of them I never come back to, and you never find out if I'm still playing them or what I thought of it in the end and all that kind of stuff. I do apologise for that, it does happen. But I do try to come back to MMOs to give you a bit of an update and stuff, so I thought I would do that on Embers Adrift. I mean, the TLDR version is that I'm 50-50, and the more I'm playing the game, the more it's swinging in the... I'm less sure about it as time goes by. There's a few reasons for that, and I'll kind of go into them. I think that the primary one is population. So and basically in a sense that there kind of still isn't any. Like previously when I was playing, on the forums and in game, a couple of people said this game kind of seems dead. There's no one playing it. This is when I'm playing off peak. By the way, I don't know what it's like on peak, but I can't imagine it's thriving. There's always a kind of a balance. You can't tell how many people are playing on peak based on off peak, but you can get a rough idea. People said, well, wait for the next wipe. When the next wipe happens, then there'll be a lot more people playing. But for me, there really isn't. The population has essentially stayed the same. I mean, I'm not sure how many is on now. 6 players, including me, and I recognise a few of those names. So they're all kind of hardcore players who are kind of pretty invested in the game. I wanted to show you this section here, which is night time. So as patches have gone, they've been changing. I think they've been moving to moving Unity versions, and as patches have been happening, the game seems to get darker and darker to a point where I can't really do much at night because I can't even see the mobs in front of me essentially until I'm being attacked by a wolf or whatever it is, and that's not a really fun experience. There is a vibrancy bar that you can turn right up, which I do. But yeah, you've got these mobs here, these firefly type mobs, but other than that, I can't see a mob in front of me. So basically, unless you get close enough to see their name tag, but then by that time, if it's something that's going to kill you, it's already aggroed you. It actually looking at my OBS recording here, it actually looks a fair bit brighter than it is looking to me in game. So maybe at night I need to play with OBS running and look at OBS. Don't know. But anyway, getting back to things. So the population kind of thing. So it's an issue because the game is so group and community focused, basically. All the systems are designed around there being other players available, but I don't feel there's any contingency in place when or if there aren't a lot of players available. This is as niche an MMO as they come, and I really don't expect the population to suddenly surge when it's finished and released, because that's just not what happens with these games. When I look at Shrouded Avatar, Project Gorgon and Worm Online, what's the other game I was playing recently, the Fallout style one, those games kind of fall into a pattern of there's always about the same players on all the time, and they're generally the most hardcore players. New players do come and go, but quite often they'll go, in my experience, like new players who haven't tried the game before and not used to its idiosyncrasies or whatever it may be. They'll come and they'll go, basically. So that can be a bit, so generally it works out that the population can stay roughly the same. Certain times, like summer, it goes down because people are on holiday or doing other things or whatever it may be. And it's a problem because not just it is a problem from a grouping sense and dungeon exploring and all that kind of stuff. Because if you log in and there's no one available, well then what do you do? The game is not really so solo friendly, and you find that the more you level, the more you find that the solo leveling becomes quite tedious and more of a grind. But if there aren't people to group with, then what do you do? But it's not just that; it feeds over into like gathering and crafting as well. And it only occurred to me recently. I was kind of thinking to myself, why are all these indie MMOs kind of going for a more sandboxy feel, particularly with regards to your character, where they kind of let you do everything? I'm playing Embers Adrift now. I realise it because I feel totally limited by what I can do. um, gathering and trade skilling. I think there's 6 gathering and trade skills at the moment, and one character can only choose 2, which limits you, because it means that all the other stuff that you need from gathering and crafting you need to get from other players. Well, if those players are not available, well then what do you do? It's so you've got a crafting and gathering system that, as well as a combat system and grouping system, is also reliant on other players being available, and there being there needs to be a healthy population. Like even if you doubled or tripled the people that are currently on to like 18, that's really still not enough. That's 3 groups, in a massive world. That's not anywhere near enough. Even if you times it by 10 and there were 60 players, that might still not be enough to fulfill your requirements, for everything that you want to do. And as I said, it's only recently that I've kind of realised that that's why a lot of these other indie MMOs kind of go for the more sandboxy feel with regards to your character, because it just means that you can, it's grindy obviously, but you can get where you want to go eventually, and be reasonably self-sufficient. If you are having trouble finding players to fulfill roles for groups, or to supply you with materials that you need so you can craft. It makes perfect sense now, and that's so it's a population is like one of the biggest concerns I've got for the game, because I think it doesn't just impact you wanting to go to dungeons and group and all that kind of stuff. It impacts literally everything. And I think that if it was me, I would be seriously considering allowing players to, if not do all the collection, all the gathering and trade skills, at least maybe to double it. So one character has more options available to them, other than relying on a population that just might not be available. And the real crux, of course, is the cost. This game is $50-$60, I think, depending on your taxes and whatever it may be. So it's the cost of a big AAA game, which is fine. I don't mind that, but it's going to have a subscription. Again, I don't mind that, but I do mind if it's a game that I can only log in and play at certain times because there's not enough people on. That's a problem. You can't have that. You can't charge $60 and a subscription fee and then only expect people to log on. When there's someone else available who can group with them or fulfill their requirements for crafting or whatever it may be. It just doesn't work. You can't have that. And I don't know, it will work for the hardcore audience who have been playing from the start. The same names that you see in chat as I see in Stranded Avatar or Project Gorgon or whatever it may be, they're always there. Maybe it's fine for those people who are heavily bought into it emotionally, and financially, but just generally, it's not going to be enough, and it's a shame if they settle for that. This small population means the game is ticking over, and we're happy with that. It's a shame that I understand it's difficult being a small team with low finances, but I don't think it hurts to set your sights a bit higher than a very, very small niche population playing a game. Yeah, but the cost is a real issue, isn't it? It's who wants to pay $60 plus $10 a month or whatever it may be to play a game where the population is so low that you can only log in at certain times to do the things you want. It's not going to work, and at the moment I don't see any contingencies for that, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I've got some other stuff to talk about in the game, but I'll stop here because it's stupidly dark. If it wasn't for this ember fly in front of me, I wouldn't be able to see around me, so I'll come back again when it's light. Okay, so we're back. I can see again. The game hadn't actually got as dark as it was going to get, and it got to a point where I couldn't see anything, so I just went and sat down somewhere safe. It took me 30 or 40 minutes to get to a point where I could play the game again, which is not good. Maybe that's something that can be tweaked, even with the high vibrancy bar. Even with the vibrancy bar up to max, I couldn't see mobs in front of me until you could see their health bar. By that time, it can be too late, which is not much fun. So before we spoke about the population and the impact a small population can have on a game focused primarily on grouping and community interaction. There are some other things as well, some decisions that kind of took me from 90-10 to kind of like 60-40, still in favour of the game. But then there has been some announcements and changes recently that would kind of take me down to 50-50 or below, and stuff that I feel a little bit like this term old school has just become a bit of a way to gatekeep mechanics that were never really fun, if we're honest with ourselves, in the first place, and are not fun now. And I know that my opinions have changed on that kind of thing, primarily because I want to play the game and have fun, not do some of these other roadblock type things that are just put in the way of you, that are not fun. That's basically what's happened. And a number of things that are kind of cropping up. I think, first of all, they're going to make the levelling process slower, which to me is a massive mistake. It's okay, it's based on data they've got, but as I said before in the first part of the video, looking at the population, the people I see playing the game, the people that I always see playing the game, and they're the people that talk on Discord and on the forums. So if you're basing it on people, the hardcore players who have probably been here from the start, they know all the ins and outs. I hear talk of power leveling, maybe they're power leveling some of their characters or whatever it may be, but I don't think you can really base leveling speed data on the current population, because the current population, I feel, is generally going to be made up of people who have been playing the game for a long time and are very experienced. But they're going to make the leveling slower, in my opinion, after level 10, which is a mistake. I mean, I personally found, particularly, again, it's a population thing, particularly if you're soloing, like I found once I got up to level 15, 16, whatever it was, leveling became extremely slow, quite tedious. Not just the speed of it, which I guess was kind of EverQuest-y speed, but also to do with the fact that because the classes are based around being in a group, you don't really have a huge toolbox with which to interact with the mobs with. It's generally what you're doing is very similar sort of problem that New World has got, in that you've got a very limited amount of skills to actually fight mobs with. So it becomes quite monotonous as well. Before the wipe happened, they gave everyone potions that you could swig, which leverage up to level 26 just to go and experience the new area. And at 26, the leveling experience became extremely slow. I mean, I was leveling a shaman. I'm leveling my shaman on P99 at the moment. It's like level 53 currently, and he was leveling quicker than my level 26 character in Embers Adrift. It's not fast. It's really not too fast, And if you're basing it on characters who are very familiar, players who are very familiar with the game, and maybe some players who are power leveling their own characters or whatever it may be, then yeah, that's I'm not sure that's a good metric, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I found once I got up to that approaching level 30 range, things became very slow. And I think increasing that is not a good idea. But there you go. It's that old thing, isn't it, where we're hardcore and we want it old school, and and it's obviously it's a minority of players, but there you go. That's just the thing. I think also, which kind of ties into, I guess the first thing that partly in the first video is that they want to tie in your crafting skills to your adventuring skills, which again just seems like something like a decision from a time way back when. It doesn't really make any sense. So I think what that means basically is that you can only level to a certain crafting or gathering skill once you've gained some adventuring levels. And I know other games have done it before, but really, it's just it's something from a time gone by. And I don't really see what it adds to it. It doesn't. The thing with it as well is not only does it not really make a huge amount of logical sense, it doesn't really make any any sense from a role playing perspective either. Because because if you wanted to be a master blacksmith, you probably wouldn't go out doing much adventuring because it takes such a long time. And I don't understand. Again, it's one of those roadblock things. I don't understand why these things are put in place. You're like, why can a player who joins a guild and wants to be the guild master crafter, why can't they just do that? And get stuff from the guild. Materials from the guild or from guild farmers. I don't understand why they want to limit that. It's the same as limiting the amount of gathering and crafting skills you can earn on one character. It just doesn't, even from a role-playing sense. I want to be a blacksmith. I enjoy doing that. Why can't I just do that? I don't know. I don't get it, but there you go. So those are the sort of changes that that I'm kind of seeing discussed or implemented. Another one was that they want to implement resistances to things like crowd control and dots. Now, initially you might think, well, that's fine. Let's take an example. EverQuest got that right. I'll play a Shaman. If I cast a dot, it gets resisted. If it does, tough luck. If it doesn't get resisted, great, it does damage. But what they want to do here is that, so like a dot, for example, that your character, dot skill that your character will use, it can either hit or miss, which is fine. It might miss completely, do nothing. That's fine. We've seen that before. But they also want to give mobs a resistance to the damage. So, like dots are general, unless you're playing a game where a class is designed around them. So, like a necromancer or a shaman in EverQuest, for example, dots are never generally that flashy anyway. In most encounters, even in EverQuest or something like Embers Adrift, where combat takes a bit longer, they never do their full damage. So implementing a resistance to the damage they do just seemed like weird. I mean, I wouldn't even put them on the bar, really. It seems pointless. If you've got a dot that does 10 damage and it might do 9 or 8 or 6 or 7 or 6 or even 5, depending on the mob, then it becomes even less of an issue, less of a useful skill, because the damage will be negligible over the period of time that the fight's going to take, even in a game where the fights are taking a bit longer. So it's these kind of changes. And when the other thing as well is that the other thing that you kind of think is, I'm not sure, as I said, I think one of the devs worked on Trial of the Avatar, but I'm not sure what the experience of the other devs are, but I think there's a danger of developers kind of getting set in their certain ways and looking at things in a certain way that doesn't really make any sense. Like, I was having a conversation with a dev about it, and and I said that, like, this is worse than EverQuest, and he said, well, no, it's better than EverQuest, and he was saying because it'll hit, but it'll hit and it'll either do maximum damage or it won't do as much damage, but at least it will hit. Whereas in EverQuest, it might just all be resisted. And I was like, well, no, because this can also be resisted, not resisted in a spell sense, but the attack can actually miss. And he was kind of debating that, like, a skill that could miss completely, or if it hits could do less damage, or in a crowd control sense, if you hit something and it's crowd control for 10 seconds, it might be 6, 7 or 5, whatever it may be. It seems to be trying to argue that a skill that can completely miss and do nothing, or if it hits could do less damage, was better than something that might completely miss, but if it hits does full damage. And there was a bit of backwards and forwards there, and I was really confused. I mean, in the end, he did say that the difference is that in Embers Adrift, there's a very, very small chance of skills missing. Well, if I can liken it to EverQuest, which is what we were, the comparison I was making when we was having a discussion, like, I was playing a shaman recently, and like over the period of a few hours leveling, like, I could count on one hand the amount of times that my dots were resisted. So the Embers Adrift miss rate is not any better than the EverQuest one, except in Embers Adrift, it might miss, but if it does hit, it might do less damage. In which case, why have the dot on the bar? It seems strange. Same with CCs as well. I know in EverQuest you've got like roots that don't always last their full amount, and that's fine. But there are lots of other CC in EverQuest that does last its full amount of time unless you hit the mob, which is fair enough. And like, so in like with an example of root in EverQuest, like root can last its maximum time, There are factors, there are things in the game where you can lower that RNG rate to a point where more often than not your route will last the full distance. And then of course you've got Enchanter and Necromancer and Bard mesmerizes and stuff, and snares from other characters from other classes that will last a full amount. So yeah, it was a. I mean, I think the change will just means that people won't use these skills, and so they just become a skill in your skill book that you never use. But it was more than the mentality of how they were thinking, where this is better than that, even though there's an option where it might do no damage, an option where it might do less damage. And again, as I said, like he did kind of mention about the miss rate and stuff, but yeah, that since I've been playing EverQuest, that's not a problem. On my shaman anyway, my dots very rarely get resisted. As I said, you can pretty much count it on one hand over a period of a good leveling process. And there's ways of obviously lowering that RNG rate even more in your favour, because as a shaman I can apply a debuff that debuffs poison and poison and what's the other resistance? The plague line of spells, can't remember, but poison and whatever, and disease resist basically. So yeah, so that was the other thing. So yeah, so the population, is a real concern, maybe the biggest one. But there's also some design decisions that are kind of leaning me more towards I'm really not sure about this game. Maybe it will just go into my box of MMOs that that I kind of look in on to see how they're going, but really. What happened there? I don't know. Yeah, but I'm very unsure about. But we'll see. It's that wasn't the only instance. Also, I on Discord I noticed that the devs get in conversation with a couple of other players about certain aspects, and I was finding it difficult to see the devs' point of view. It didn't really seem to make a lot of sense in comparison. Maybe there was miscommunication, but in comparison to what the player was actually trying to talk about. But it did feel a bit like the devs were kind of in this zone of, this is what I believe, and even if it kind of seemed a bit weird in the case that I was talking about. But I'm sure the dev feels differently about it. So yeah, that's just one of those things. But yeah, so there are also some changes in the game that seem to be, in my opinion, making the game, after a period where they seem to be making the game a bit more user friendly with some more quality of life stuff. It seems to be going back the other way. I've noticed, and I'm not sure if they've tweaked it a bit, but I'm not sure if it's just bad luck, but I've noticed an increase in roaming 2 chevron mobs as well again. I'm not sure if that's something that they've recently rebalanced, but didn't put it in the patch notes. So yeah, I was trying to do some gathering and stuff the other day, just to wherever the wall is, just to the right and left of the wall, and I just kept bumping into 2 chevron groups of 2 chevron mobs, and then I just logged out because it wasn't fun, and I think going back to just briefly talk about the thing about the, it's annoying. To talk about like the term old school and hardcore being used as a bit of a like a gatekeeping thing for old mechanics that most people didn't like at the time really, and they just accepted them, but now just seem like what they actually are, and that's just time sinks to keep you in a game that maybe just doesn't have enough else going for it. It's these kind of things that I think turn people away from the game more and more, and like even taking into consideration the fact that you're looking at an old school and a hardcore experience. These things can be tweaked to a point where they're a bit broader. You don't have to essentially kill your game before it's even released, just because you want to stick to a vision and a formula. I think there needs to be some flexibility. But in my experience, I guess it's when you're creating anything really. It's like when I have done, or I create a YouTube video or whatever it may be. You just think you're right, I guess. And there's an ego at play, and you've got this vision, and it has to be right. And yeah, I mean, we've all been there. I've been there as well. But I do feel that the population one is really important. It really is something they need to look at, because you can't. I know there'll be a minority of people who won't agree, but they're going to be the players who are already invested in the game, financially and emotionally, and they've been here from the start and they've been here a long time. But you can't expect players to pay out AAA money for a game, then pay a subscription. And the way you've designed your game is failing because there aren't enough players around to support that game design. You need to have a contingency in place. Maybe there is a contingency in place. I don't know. Personally, if I was designing something and I was in this situation, I would probably implement the contingency mildly before the problem arose. So maybe I would let, as an example, maybe I would let one player, maybe I would let one character, learn an extra one, or maybe let a single character learn 3 or 4 gathering and crafting skills rather than just 2. Just to test it out to see how that goes. Maybe I would leave the experience. Maybe I would leave the leveling speed alone at the moment, and maybe before release I would have a couple of big weekends where that were free, and I would give people some leveling potions, and then maybe what I would do is ask new players maybe to go out and level, give feedback on that, and maybe and then maybe look at that data as well. I think the biggest mistake that all of these games make, all of them, whatever they may be, is that they end up listening to, and I can see what happens. They end up listening to a hardcore minority who want a certain thing, whether it's good for the game or not. And the reason they do that is because quite often that's the only community that's around. The only voices that are being heard in game or on Discord or on the forums are those hardcore players that are always around and are always being heard. You need, I think, for a game to be successful, you need a majority. You need a majority feedback and a majority opinion, not the opinion of people who have been there from the start and they've become very, very set in what they want. Even if you, as a developer, have moved forward and you want to implement some changes, but you're frightened of doing them because you don't want to upset the people that are already there. That's what I would do. I really think that the population thing is one of the biggest issues, but I think also that leveling speed is a really big thing for people as well. And I would not make any changes based on the current crop of very experienced players that are currently playing, who have been playing for a long time and know their way around the game. I would try and encourage a couple of free weekends where anyone can log in and try it. Give them some potions so they can level themselves to 30. Go out and try and level up some stuff. Try and level up, and then kind of see what their experience is there. Yeah. And the same goes for other stuff as well that I've talked about. I think we need to get more. You need to get more of a view of just new players coming in. I think that's what the game needs, not the tired voices, even voices like mine. It's, yeah. Anyway, that's it really. Not much else to talk about. Embers Adrift kind of goes in that box of MMOs that I'll keep my eye on, and I will keep logging into, but I'm very 50-50 as to whether it's going to be a game for anyone, even someone who's got a reasonable amount of time. At the moment, I'm not sure it's going to be a game for you, really. Just because I just feel like there are so many roadblocks, and more and more roadblocks are being put in place. Yeah, but I mean, maybe the saving grace. I mean, I'm not sure if this is true. Someone told me that you can box in the game, and I haven't seen anything. I did go through the terms and services, and I haven't seen anything in there that says that you can't box or play multiple accounts at the same time. So maybe that's a saving grace. Maybe when you log in and there's no one available, maybe you can have a little duo. Maybe you can have like maybe you can have another character doing stuff. I mean, the thing is, from a crafting point of view, people have alts anyway, right? And I think most people that I've spoken to in the game, including 2 or 3 that have played a long time from alpha when the game was called something else, have got alts that do everything. And that's kind of why I'm suggesting just let one character do it all. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. People are going to do it anyway. You're just putting something in the way to stop that to make that harder, essentially. Yeah, but there you go. Enough. To end on a positive, like, what's good about the game was still good about it. You know, the combat is still nicely paced. As a solo player, I'm a bit... well, I'm not a solo player, actually, because I know some people who played the game, and we'll probably, when it's released, we'll probably play it in a duo or trio or whatever it may be. But if you're a solo player, it does become incredibly slow and monotonous later on, I guess by design. But, yeah, that's a big issue if there's not enough people around to group with or whatever it may be. But anyway, I'm going over the same topics now. But yeah, just to finish that point, if boxing is allowed, then I guess maybe that might be a slight reprieve for people who find themselves in that situation. I hope it doesn't. If it is allowed, I hope it doesn't get made illegal for release, because you know there will be people who will buy a couple of accounts, extra money for the developers, and it gives people more options if there's an issue with population, that kind of thing. It's what I was talking about earlier on about trying to fix problems before they occur. So maybe running a couple of accounts is a good idea for someone, and don't stop that, because yeah, it means extra money for them and it allows people more options. You know, I don't know. Anyway, that's enough. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. Okay, PS, no matter how much I waffle, I always seem to miss out points that I was going to make. So it's mostly about the leveling experience. It's mostly about how systems all interact and have a knock-on effect to each other. So leveling experience, the fact that you have to you have to level up your character, level up your crafting, and the fact that you're limited in what crafting and gathering skills one character can do. So slow leveling or slowing leveling down has an impact on you leveling up your character. If you just enjoy crafting and you want to level up a crafter, you need to level up your adventure level, which is slower because the leveling rate has been increased. Or you might have an adventuring character and you want to have an alt, but that alt can't. You've done your leveling experience, you've got that badge, you don't want to do it again, but you've got to do it again because you want to do a crafter as well. Not only have you got to do it again, but the leveling experience is slower. You want alts because you can't find people online to get the stuff from, to get the stuff that you need from them to your crafting. So you need alts. Leveling experience is made slower, so then your alts take longer to level and stuff. All of these systems all, congeal into a massive. This is becoming less and less fun, and I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make at the start. How all these systems interact and have a negative. It might seem okay in isolation, but it has a negative impact on so many other things when you change something like that. But anyway, that's definitely it.